On a fog-soaked morning deep in Olympic National Forest, Ranger Elliot Ward opened the station door and froze. Standing on the porch was a massive Kodiak bear, but it wasn't her size that stole his breath. It was the tears shimmering in her eyes. In her mouth hung a fading cub, barely clinging to life. No roar, no threat, just a trembling mother begging for help. Elliot didn't know it yet, but that moment would pull him into a race against nature, the law, and the unseen predators waiting in the trees. Dawn came to the ranger station the way old memories come back, quietly at first, then all at once. Mist lay across the clearing like a pale quilt, stitched by cedar and fir, and the air smelled of wet bark and cold stone. Elliot Ward unlatched the heavy door with a nudge of his shoulder, a chipped mug of black coffee warming his palm. He was a man who preferred the hour before voices and engines, when only the forest was awake and its language was wind. He stepped onto the wooden stoop and listened to the soft ticking of the stovepipe cooling behind him and the far-off hush of a river moving where no road could follow. He almost missed it. A darker weight inside the gray. A presence that stopped his foot before it met the next board. The fog breathed, parted, and there she was, broad as the porch, tall as the rail, her coat a wet sheen of brown-black, and her eyes, more than anything else, alive with a kind of stormed-over grief. It took Elliot's mind a long, elastic second to find the word bear, and another to accept that she stood not in the trees where bears belong, but at his door, as if she had climbed the stairs to ring the bell. Everything he'd been taught flickered through him, the spacing, the stance, the way to make himself big, the steady voice, the retreat without turning. His free hand hovered toward the jam where the deterrent spray hung clipped. He didn't reach it, because the bear did something that pressed its paw on the brake of the world. She rocked once, as though gathering herself, and then, with a tenderness that had no name in any training manual, she set a small, limp bundle from her mouth onto the boards at his feet. It was a cub, the size of a loaf of bread with winter still clinging to it. One ear dried stiff with blood, one hind leg swollen as if the joint had turned to fire. The chest beneath its coarse baby fur moved the way a moth's wings move when trapped against glass. There, not there, there again. Elliot felt his heart step sideways. The bear lifted her head. Tears glazed her eyes, not human exactly, but unmistakable in their shine, the way water pools in a clay bowl. He had seen animals in pain, elk downed on ice, coyotes snagged in wire. But grief, this pleading, he had not known it could look back at him from something wild. He set the coffee on the rail without looking away. "Easy," he said, the word barely leaving his mouth, not meant to tame her but to steady himself. Inside the station, a light popped on. Elliot didn't turn. He knew the pattern of those steps and the scrape of that chair. Lauren Pike, on the early shift at the adjacent Trailhead kiosk, had tapped into the shared security feed like she always did when she sensed something off. The camera above the door would be giving her a quiet show of the impossible. Elliot imagined her phone already in her hand, a breath caught in her throat. He didn't wave. Any motion that wasn't necessary felt like a bad idea. The bear eased back a pace, then another, a careful retreat to the top step. She did not rear or bluff. She sat. Great shoulders rising and falling, eyes pinned to the cub and the man who stood with it. Elliot crouched because that's what the moment asked of him, not what the handbook prescribed. His knees announced their opinion of the choice, but he ignored them. He put 2 fingers lightly on the cub's ribs. The skin was cold, the breath shallow, the pulse a skittering thing hard to catch. "God," he heard himself say, and because no one else would, he answered, "He's still with us." Fog gathered on his eyelashes. The porch smelled of pitch and iron. Somewhere a jay scolded, far away and unimportant. He took off his jacket and folded it, a makeshift nest, and slid the cub onto it with a care he hadn't used since his sister handed him her newborn decades ago and said, "Don't you dare drop him." The cub's tongue found the edge of its mouth as if remembering the old motion of nursing and then forgot again. The bear's breath thickened, a low thrumming sound that didn't fill the space with threat so much as with a mother's name for fear. Elliot lifted his hands, palms open. "I hear you," he whispered. "I do." Behind him, door hinges gave a small step. "Elle," Lauren said, "no more than air." He could picture her, dark braid tucked into a cap, ranger patch worn at the corners, eyes that missed very little. He didn't turn. "Stay inside," he said, and heard how thin the instructions sounded against the throb of the moment. "Camera's rolling," she murmured. "You want me on the radio?" "Not yet." Is she crying?" He didn't answer. There are questions that find their own answers and lay them at your feet. Elliot slid one arm under the cub and felt the heat of fever against the chill of shock, a confused weather pattern under fur. He stood slowly, the jacket cradled like a sling, and moved toward the door. The bear did not rise. She watched. The muscle in her jaw worked once, then was still. The old boards gave a soft complaint under Elliot's boots. He crossed the threshold, and Lauren eased the door wider and then snug again behind them, as if closing it too quickly might shatter something delicate that had just been set in motion. The room held the night's warmth in pockets. Elliot laid the cub on the long work table by the window, where light came thin and honest through the mist. Lauren was already pulling a storage bin from beneath the counter, the one labeled First Aid, Animal, the unofficial kit every ranger claims doesn't exist until it has to. She handed him towels, a camping hand warmer, a bottle of sterile saline. Her eyes flicked once to the window, to the hulking shadow on the other side of the glass. "She's not leaving," she said. Not as a warning, but as a vow. Elliot cleaned the ear with a care that made his hands feel too large. Blood loosened, new bleed welled. He pressed gauze, counted, breathed. The hind leg told its own story. 2 neat crescents where teeth had met, the flesh angry and hot. Not the wide bite of a boar. Narrower. Higher pressure. He stored that away. Later would need names for things. Now needed breath. He warmed a little water with a spoonful of sugar, the campground version of a lifeline, and let a drop touch the cub's tongue. Nothing. He waited. Another drop. A flutter. The smallest swallow. He felt a tremor in his chest that wasn't fear and wasn't relief, but the simple fact of a door opening where there had been wall. He bent closer, not to kiss, not to pray, though both those motions lived in the bend. "Stay," he said. "That's all you have to do. Just stay." Outside, the bear's silhouette shifted, not forward but sideways, as if arranging herself into the shape of patience. The fog thinned enough for Lauren to catch the line of a scar across one of the great paws and whisper, as if telling the woods a secret, "She's been through a war." Elliot wrapped the cub in a towel warmed by the hand warmer and tucked the edges under like swaddling. He felt the tiny ribs travel a fraction farther with each breath. He did the math he always did. The time it would take a wildlife vet to reach this far trail spur, the cell dead zones on Highway 101, the number of minutes hypothermia steals when it's allowed an open door. The math didn't add up to salvation yet, but the column for hope had more than zeros. Lauren moved to the radio handset and paused. "Say the word," she said. "Give me 5, he answered, eyes on the cub. A bead of moisture gathered at the corner of the tiny eye, not a tear so much as the evidence of being still here, and for a man who trusted evidence over miracles, it was enough for now. The kettle on the old propane stove began to murmur. The forest answered with a gust that leaned into the siding and then let go. Elliot looked through the glass at the bear. She met his gaze with something that felt like an agreement. It was not language, but it was not less than language. Between them lay a threshold and a life. He did not know then about the tracks they would find later, the narrow print that would make Samira Cole purse her lips and say wolves, but not wolves, not exactly. He did not know about the message already traveling on other radios and other lines, the one that would turn help into trouble by noon. He knew only that the morning had asked him a question, and he had answered it without speaking. He would try. Beyond the porch, the fog unspooled from the trees and lifted in a slow breath. The first raven of the day traced a black thread over the clearing. Elliot steadied the bottle, the towel, the flicker of life in his hands. Outside, the bear bowed her head. Inside, the tiniest tongue remembered again and swallowed. By the time the kettle hissed to quiet, the ranger station had the feel of a field hospital no one had meant to open. Towels warmed on the back of a chair. The cub slept and startled and slept again, its breath measuring out the seconds. Lauren moved with the economy of someone who knew where every drawer lived. Elliot washed his hands so often the skin across his knuckles went pale. The handbook lived on a shelf within reach, a thick, stern thing printed in a font that never smiled. Elliot didn't need to read it to know what it would say about harboring a wild animal in a government building. He also didn't need a book to recognize the sound outside the window, slow, even breaths, a mother holding herself together because panic would cost more than she had to give. Some rules are built for ordinary days. This was not one of them. He eased the gauze from the small ear. Fresh red beaded, then slowed, then stopped. The hind leg told a deeper story. Two tight arcs where teeth had met, bruising that pushed heat up through fur, swelling that threatened the joint. He had seen boar bites, the broad stamp of them. This was narrower, more exact, as if made by a mouth that had learned precision the hard way. He glanced at Lauren. "Not a boar," he said. She nodded once. "You thinking canid?" "Maybe, but not coyote. Pressure's wrong." He rinsed the forceps. "I want Samira's eyes on this." Lauren had the phone in his hand before he asked. The first call bounced off a cell shadow. The second found the high window of reception that sometimes opened over the west ridge. When Samira answered, her voice came in clear and brisk, already on the road, by the sound of tires working gravel. Elliot gave her the short version and then the long one, sparing her none of the details that mattered. The placement of the bites, the fever, the mother who had sat down on the porch like a supplicant at church. "Wolves?" Lauren mouthed. Samira didn't say the word right away. "We've had reports," she said instead, "of hybrid packs pushing down from unfenced land, wolf crossed with dogs that were never meant to be out there. They don't obey the old perimeter, they're bold, and they know how to test a mother." Elliot looked toward the window. The bear's silhouette had changed. Not nearer, not farther. Turned, slightly, as if listening past the building. A small tremor went through the cub and settled. "How far out are you?" he asked. 40 if the logging truck gets out of my way. I've got antibiotics, fluids, better, dressings. Sit tight. And Elliot?" Her voice softened, not much, just enough to slip past his ribs. "I know the regs, but keep that door shut to everyone else until I get there." He knew who everyone else meant. The spreadsheet minds, the good intentions that came with tags and transport crates. He set the phone down and studied the bite again. The skin around it had begun to lose the hard shine of swelling. Heat still rose, but it rode a smaller wave. He made a note in his head. First response working. Then the other note formed. Uninvited. Time is still the boss. Lauren drifted to the glass. She's lifting her head. The bear's muzzle tipped, tasting something the humans could not. The fog had thinned to scraps. Beyond the clearing, the understory wore its ordinary tangle. Ordinary had a way of hiding the necessary. Elliot prepped another small line of sugared water and touched a drop to the cub's tongue. A swallow. A tiny, stubborn will. "Good," he said. And it wasn't clear whether he meant the cub or himself. He tucked the warmed towel tighter. You keep that up and I'll let you chew my bootlaces later. Lauren's radio clipped quietly at her shoulder, the kind of notification that could be ignored until it couldn't. She silenced it and gave him a look. Not now. He agreed without words. The station had a back door that opened to a sliver of yard where old bare grass and fir roots made their own kind of order. Elliot stepped there for 90 seconds to fetch a sealed bottle from the emergency cache. The air had that mountain-cool bite that clears a man's head and makes him sure of what matters. The hummed line of insects had not begun yet. The world was almost kind. Then the underbrush blinked. 2 pale coins hung low in the thicket, not the soft amber of deer, not the flashlight fear of raccoon. These were a level gaze, rimmed with frost, set the way a predator sets its eyes when it is measuring distance rather than beauty. The coins did not move. Behind them the leaves held their breath. Elliot did not reach for his sidearm. He did not run. He stood the way he'd taught rookies to stand when the line between safety and theater grew thin. Taller than he felt, hands open, voice a steady plank laid across a narrow stream. "Not today," he said to the brush. "Not this door." From the porch, a sound rose. No roar, no charge. A bass note that shaped itself into warning without leaving the mouth. The bear had turned toward the same spot, her body a drawn bow that did not loose. The coins blinked once more and unhooked from the sightline. Brush bowed, then filled the space it had made. The yard became a yard again. Elliot backed into the station and shut the door with a care that kept it from speaking. Lauren had watched the whole thing in the reflection of the glass. "What did you see?" "Eyes," he said. "Not alone. Felt like a pair and a shadow." She blew out a breath she'd been saving. Samira's clock just sped up. He returned to the table and the small life upon it. The cub's breaths were longer now, the pauses less frayed. He swapped the damp towel for one that had been warming toward comfort. The room smelled faintly of saline and pine. He cleaned his hands again and felt the ache in his wrists from the careful work. Outside, the bear settled into a new posture. A sentinel turned to one side, as if guarding 2 directions at once. The radio finally insisted. Lauren lifted it an inch. Elliot nodded. She pressed the button. A dispatcher's voice came through, professional and distant, requesting a status update on a possible wildlife incident at Station 07. Lauren's eyes flicked to Elliot. He answered with a single shake of his head. She let the message trail into static and then replied with a half-truth. Routine dawn check. Fog lifting. All quiet. All quiet lasted 7 seconds. A branch snapped in the timber line. Clean, deliberate. Not wind stumble, not squirrel chatter. The bear's head came up again. Elliot felt the change before he named it. The clearing was being read by more than eyes. Somewhere out there, rules of another kind were in session, old and simple and sharp as teeth. He looked at the cub, then at the mother, then at the tree line. "We hold this line," he said softly, as if swearing it to the building itself. "We hold it until help gets here." The kettle, forgotten, clicked as it cooled. The light on the far ridge found a seam in the clouds and slid a thin blade across the clearing. In that blade of light, the bear's coat showed a faint scatter of scars, like old stars on a night map. Elliot saw them and understood. This was not her first petition, only the first she had filed at a human door. He drew a breath that tasted of metal and fur. The cub stirred, gave a small rasping sound, and settled deeper into the warmth. Outside, the woods waited with their hidden arithmetic. Inside, the rule that had always seemed so sure of itself lay open beside the tools on the table. Not broken exactly, but remade into something that could hold a life. By late morning, the ranger station felt smaller, as though the walls had begun inching inward in quiet sympathy with the tension inside. The air was warm from the stove, sharp with antiseptic, and laced with that subtle animal scent that clings to fur when fear and fever mix. Elliot stood over the cub again, the way a man stands over a map he's read 100 times, knowing each contour, yet hoping to find something new. The little body fought in its own quiet way, breaths deeper now, small muscles twitching as though testing the memory of life. Lauren checked her watch for the 10th time in an hour. "Samira should have been here by now," she murmured. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tapped the radio casing. She was listening for a call no one wanted to hear. "She's coming," Elliot said. "That logging truck doesn't move for anyone." He didn't admit the other truth pressing at him. Samira's warning about hybrid wolves hadn't left his mind. Those eyes from the brush, pale, unblinking, felt as close as the window. He kept glancing toward the line of trees, watching the shadows for any sign of a shape that shouldn't be there. The door shuddered softly. Not a knock, more like a breath of movement against wood. The mother bear had risen again. Her silhouette loomed across the glass, broad shoulders tapering into a heavy neck, her presence an anchor against whatever prowled the perimeter. Her ear flicked sharply, catching sounds no human could parse. The kettle clicked its warning one more time. The cub stirred. Its eyes, glassy, unfocused, blinked once, and Elliot leaned in. "Easy, little one," he whispered. "Just stay with us." A low growl rolled across the yard, so faint it might have been mistaken for distant thunder. Lauren stiffened. "She's warning something," she said. "Not us. Something else." Before Elliot could answer, tires crunched gravel outside, and a familiar voice cut through the quiet. "Ward, Pike, open up!" Samira's outline appeared as she jogged toward the station, arms heavy with gear, 2 duffel bags and a med kit slung across her shoulder. She pushed inside, cheeks flushed, eyes already sweeping the room. "Show me the wounds," she said, barely a greeting. Her tone had the focus of someone who had outrun worry just to catch up with duty. Elliot stepped aside. Samira pulled on gloves, leaned over the cub, and assessed with a precision that came from years of working alongside creatures that never thanked her but often owed her their lives. She tilted the cub's leg, noted the fresher edges near the bite, then inhaled sharply. "Hybrid," she said. "No doubt." Lauren exhaled through her teeth. "They're further east than your reports showed." "They're being pushed," Samira replied. "Territory's shrinking. If they took a run at this cub, they'll circle back. They don't quit once they've marked a target." Elliot felt the room tighten. "We saw eyes in the brush earlier." Samira didn't look surprised. "Then we're already on their map." She prepared a syringe, drew up a measured line of antibiotic, and injected it into the cub's flank with a tenderness that seemed at odds with her briskness. The cub whimpered faintly, its first sound more than a sigh. "A good sign," she said. Pain meant sensation. Sensation meant fight. She held her stethoscope against its chest. "Heartbeat's climbing. Fever's high, but not spiking. The swelling will need more time, but he's young. Young ones bounce back harder than we expect." Elliot dared a breath of relief. "So he has a chance." "A slim one," Samira warned. "But yes." Then the radio chirped. Lauren froze. "Don't answer that," she said, though the message had already begun bleeding through. The speaker. "All units near District 4 be advised. Wildlife Services received an unverified report of an injured bear cub at Station 07. Federal Retrieval Team en route. ETA." Lauren slapped the off switch so hard the casing rattled. Samira's eyes widened. "You didn't call this in, did you?" "No," Elliot said. "But someone must have seen the bear near the ridge trail. A sighting that close to human structures always triggers a file." "Not good," Samira muttered. "If the feds take the cub, they'll tranquilize the mother too, and if she resists, they'll deem her a risk," Lauren finished grimly. "Protocol is strict." Elliot braced the table edge. He felt the shift the way a tree feels the first crack before it falls. Small, decisive, irreversible. "We're running out of time." Outside, the bear rose onto her hind legs, sniffing the wind. Her posture sharpened into something fierce and ancient. A second growl rolled from the trees, deeper this time, closer. The hybrid wolves were circling, reading the yard as if it were a contested prize. Samira moved to the window, breath fogging the glass. "They're testing her," she whispered. "Testing the station. They know she left the cub behind." Elliot's mind worked the problem like a trail route, mapping risks, exits, breaks in terrain. "We can't have the wolves here when the federal team arrives. And we definitely can't have the mother bear panicked with strangers rolling in." Lauren glanced at him. "What are you thinking?" He didn't answer immediately. He watched the cub breathe. He watched the mother bear guard. He watched the woods tighten like a fist around the clearing. "I'm thinking," he finally said, "that we have to finish what we started. If this cub is going back to her, it has to be soon. Before wolves. Before the retrieval team." Samira stepped closer. "You're talking about releasing him now? In his condition?" "At dawn tomorrow," Elliot clarified. "If he stabilizes. It's the only window. After that, they'll be on us. And if they take him," his voice thinned, "she'll lose more than a cub." The mother bear pressed her massive shoulder against the siding, making the wall hum, as though she sensed the decision forming. The cub whimpered again, not in pain this time, something softer, like the smallest echo of calling back. Samira rested a hand on Elliot's arm. "If we do this, we do it clean. I'll stay the night, monitor his vitals. We move at first light." Lauren nodded. "I'll run interference on the radio. Buy us a few hours." Outside, the brush crackled. Something moved with the confidence of hunger. The mother bear lowered to all fours, her muscles bunching like coiled rope. Elliot looked from the window to the cub, from the cub to his colleagues, from his colleagues to the woods that knew every secret mankind had forgotten. "Then it's settled," he said, quietly. "We race the clock." None of them spoke after that. They didn't need to. The forest spoke enough for all of them. Its low warnings, its held breath, its circling threat. And somewhere beyond the clearing, unseen but felt, the hybrid pack shifted their weight in the shadows, waiting for night. The night before the release stretched long and uneasy, the kind that felt stitched from equal parts silence and warning. The cub slept in a makeshift cradle of towels beside the wood stove, its breaths ragged but present, each one a small defiance against whatever darkness had nearly taken him. Samira monitored vitals with the quiet devotion of someone who knew how fragile life could be when balanced between fever and hope. Lauren sat near the door, radio off, listening for engines or voices, or anything that might break the thin shield of time they had left. Outside, the mother bear kept her vigil. Every so often, her shadow passed across the window. A hulking shape softened only by the patience of a creature who refused to leave her child behind. The hybrid pack prowled somewhere deeper in the timber. Their presence felt more than heard, like a cold hand hovering an inch above the skin. Elliot barely slept. He tended the stove, rewarmed towels, checked the cub's bandages, and caught himself whispering encouragement that sounded more like prayers than he cared to admit. By the time dawn seeped into the clearing, pale and cautious, the cub's fever had broken. Samira lifted its tiny paw, felt the faint resistance of returning strength, and nodded. "He's ready," she said. "Weak, but ready." Elliot didn't answer right away. He took in the sight of the small creature who had entered his life in silence and changed the shape of it without permission. Then he opened the station door. Cold air swept in, clean and sharp. The mother bear stood at the edge of the clearing, head raised, nostrils flaring as she caught the familiar scent of her cub on the morning breeze. Lauren secured her jacket. Radios jammed with chatter. "The federal team is moving this direction. We've got maybe 2 hours before they reach the ridge." "Then we don't waste a minute," Elliot said. Samira wrapped the cub in a blanket, its dark eyes barely open but tracking the motion of hands it had come to trust. They stepped out together, Elliot in the lead, Samira carrying the cub close, Lauren sweeping the tree line with steady eyes. Frost cracked faintly under their boots. Mist curled around their legs like a restless animal. The mother bear watched them approach but didn't advance. She stood like an old statue carved from muscle and longing, her breath clouding in the frigid dawn. Elliot lifted a hand, showing he carried nothing threatening. The bear's ears twitched, her weight shifted. "We take him just past the ridge," Samira whispered. "A quiet spot. She'll follow." And she did. As they moved into the forest, the bear slipped, behind them like a massive, grieving shadow. At no point did she come too close, yet she never let them drift out of reach. Each step felt suspended between fear and reverence. Halfway up the ridge trail, the world offered its first warning. A long, rolling snarl drifted from the spruce thicket to their right. Lauren froze. Samira tightened her hold on the cub. Elliot angled his body toward the sound. Then another snarl answered from the left. Not wolves, not dogs. Something between. The hybrid pack staking claim to what they thought was theirs. The mother bear swung her head toward the sound, her body widening, the hair along her spine bristling in a line of fury. Elliot could feel the shift, the moment instinct outran injury or fear, the moment a mother decided nothing living would take her child again. "Keep moving," Elliot said quietly. "Don't run. Just move." They climbed the final stretch of the ridge, hearts pounding. The forest pressed closer, branches whispering overhead. The hybrids stalked them from both sides, shapes flickering between trunks, eyes catching the pale morning light like shards of moonlit ice. At the crest, the landscape opened into a small clearing, nestled beneath a rise of moss-covered stone. It felt ancient, like a place the forest had been saving. Samira knelt and laid the cub gently onto the ground. The mother bear approached, sniffing deeply, her breath breaking into small huffs of recognition. Her massive head lowered until her muzzle brushed the cub's cheek. But before she gathered him up, a rustle snapped through the undergrowth. A lithe gray form burst into view. A hybrid, larger than the others, scar along its flank, moving with the determination of a creature that understood victory had been stolen from it once already. It lunged. The mother bear became thunder. She surged forward, blocking the path, her roar ripping through the clearing with a force that shook snow from the branches above. The hybrid skidded back, claws tearing soil. But it wasn't retreating, not yet. Elliot stepped toward Samira and Lauren, positioning himself between them and the threat. He didn't reach for his firearm. He knew it would escalate faster than end it. Instead, he shouted. A single sharp command meant to break the predator's rhythm. The mother bear did the rest. She barreled forward, jaws snapping, her weight alone sending the hybrid rolling. It scrambled to its feet, limped into the thicket, and vanished. The forest swallowed the rest of the pack with it, their confidence broken by something far older and fiercer than they were. Silence returned in a trembling wave. The mother bear turned back to her cub, nudging him gently. The cub blinked, then reached its paw weakly toward her fur. She gathered him up in her mouth with an impossible tenderness. Elliot felt something in his chest tighten. A blend of sorrow, relief, and awe he knew he'd never find words big enough for. He backed away with Lauren and Samira, giving the pair space. But before the bear left, something unexpected happened. She paused. She looked at Elliot, not with fear, not with wildness, but with a stillness that carried meaning across the impossible distance between species. Then she lowered her head. Just a fraction. Just enough. A gesture. A thank you. Then she turned, cub secured, and disappeared between the towering firs. Branches folded behind her like a curtain falling on a sacred play. The three of them stood still for a long time. Eventually, Lauren exhaled. Federal team's going to arrive and find nothing but tracks. Tracks and a miracle, Samira added softly. They hiked back to the station without speaking much. Sometimes silence holds more truth than explanation. The morning brightened. The radio asked questions they didn't answer, and life returned, slowly, to the rhythm of work and duty. Weeks passed. Snow melted into spring runoff. Rumors of a hybrid pack roaming the ridge faded. Elliot resumed patrols, though now he found himself pausing at the edge of the same clearing where the cub had been returned. Then, one misty afternoon, he opened the station door and stopped short. On the porch lay a small offering, a cluster of ripe berries arranged in a careful circle, topped with a polished river stone. No footprints led to it, yet something in the air carried a familiar weight. A scent of earth and cedar, a breath of gratitude. Elliot knelt, touched the stone, and felt the forest watching. Some bonds, he thought, don't end. They simply move into the trees. And somewhere beyond the clearing, where shadows softened into green, a mother bear guided her growing cub through the wild, alive, whole, and forever part of the story he never meant to write, yet would carry with him for the rest of his life. If you stayed with this story until the end, thank you. Now I'd love to hear from you. Leave a simple comment, even just a 0 or 1, to let me know you're here and still enjoying these journeys into the wild. Your comments help this channel reach more people who love heartfelt stories like this. And if you'd like to hear what happens in the next incredible tale, don't forget to subscribe. There are so many more stories waiting for you. Stories of courage, compassion, and the unexpected bonds between humans and the creatures who share our world. I'll see you in the next one.